Nobody knew that healthcare could be so complicated.
Trump was a failure on healthcare.
Hundreds of thousands of Black Americans lost healthcare insurance. That is outrageous.
And if he's president again, he would cancel insurance for millions more of us.
We cannot go back. President Biden and Vice President Harris have lowered healthcare premiums and expanded coverage for Black families. They also capped the price of insulin at $35. Joe Biden is getting the job done for people just like me.
I'm Joe Biden, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Biden for president.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, however you're watching, wherever you're watching, however you listen, wherever you listen. It's the Bet Online Salute to Troy podcast, and happy birthday, America. For those of you who are watching today, happy 4th of July and all those good holidays. We are 2/3 of the Bearded Bandits. Well, we got a beard. We got a 4th of July beard on Jamal. It's coming in, folks. You guys been asking for it. We're the Bearded Bandits, and the beard is in on Jamal. Jamal, how are you doing this holiday week? I hate middle of the week holidays, but how are you doing preparing for the holiday and all that good stuff?
Doing well, Coach. Excited about the holiday weekend here. We got 4 days upon us, so wishing you and your family a wonderful, happy 4th of July. You know, you and I were talking offline. We're each gonna have some burgers and hot dogs on the grill, and should be a fun time. And always such a delight to be able to talk SC ball here and everybody's favorite topic, which is recruiting. So tons to talk about today.
Definitely. We've had a big turn. I wouldn't say a big turn. But no, you know what? I would say we've had a turn, but it looks like we're going to have a big turn coming with everything that's popping up in the recruiting era. I will say this, and I'm going to say it here first. And then I guarantee you, in 2 years, all the big heads and all the big talking names are going to say this. This time of year is the biggest time of year for recruiting. That's what I'm starting to know. If you look at it, all the commitments are happening right now. The decommitments are happening right now. I think this era, and I get why it's happening right now. It's happening right now because after this, they won't be able to go on any more visits. They're going to be in football practice. They're going to be locked into their season, and the recruiting won't be the same. So I think this is why people are making their decisions now. I guarantee you, in 2 years, all the big heads are going to be like, oh, this is the most important time for recruiting. You guys heard it here first. This is the most important time for recruiting. So March commits don't matter. All that stuff doesn't matter. I think the hard commitments that you get right now are the guys that are locked in. They're making their decision, and it'll be harder to turn these guys that commit than it is to turn a March guy or an April guy or a guy who's in 2026 who's committed already. So you heard it here first. That's all I'm saying. But we are making a turn of the corner. We are making some pursuits. I believe we flipped a guy from Auburn. I think we flipped the old lineman from Auburn, the one that Ryan didn't think we'd be able to flip. I believe so. All indications are pointing saying that we did flip that guy. We'll wait until it's announced to see if we did flip him. But we did get a commit. Two commits. Yep, we got 2 commitments. We'll talk about Corey Sims first. Corey Sims, another receiver, talented guy. Big, long, athletic dude, 6'3", 205, from Missouri, which is interesting. I don't think SC has ever had anybody from Missouri, and that's crazy how much recruiting has changed. So I find that one very, very interesting. But class of 2025, another guy in the room, another youngster in the room. I think if they all stay, this could be a really good class. There's a ton of upside. The plus thing about being a receiver quarterback, you're playing for Lincoln Riley, right? So you're going to get a ton of reps. They're going to give you the most opportunities possible. I think this is just another one that adds depth. Will he be a world beater? That remains to be seen. The question is, and I'm always going to ask this question, is he a bag chaser or is he there to develop and trying to get better? If he is there to try to get better and a developer, I think this is what you need. And this is, I'm pretty sure we're getting a good number of high school kids. The goal, to me, I feel like the goal should be 20 high school kids, and they are hitting the high school road tough. So hopefully this does work out. I'm excited about Corey Sims. I can't wait to see him develop. I will say this: he'll have to stay patient. For him to come in right now and expect to play is so unrealistic. He'll be back in Missouri in by December. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is one of those things, like, you have to come and you have to expect. So I hope he understands the expectations. I hope he wasn't given the old, yeah, you can come play right now. He's not playing right now, unhappy. And next thing you know, next season he's playing for the Tigers, where everybody probably thought he should have been. So if he's staying patient and understands that, I think we could see a good develop, and I think we could see a very good role player for USC, like Steve Smith, like, you know what I mean? Like, he's not the star of the team, but he's a very important factor of the team. What do you think, Jamal?
Yeah, Coach. I mean, Corey Sims, a lot to like here. As you mentioned, 6'3", 205, from the state of Missouri, was recruited by Missouri, by Tennessee, and others. So it's always nice to kind of go into SEC country. He's a 4-star. A lot of comparisons with that 6'3", 205 frame, just originally, given just how raw he is right now, to an A.J. Brown. I mean, that's kind of the ceiling here. If all falls right, that's the type of dynamic target and weapon he could potentially be moving forward. He's the number 3 overall prospect in the state of Missouri, the number 19 overall wide receiver prospect in the nation, and the number 89 prospect overall. So a really nice get here. Again, it's a Lincoln Riley wheelhouse. It's his offense. Yet another target that comes in there. And you got to think in 2025, his first year, he's going to be getting the tutelage potentially from the likes of a Zachariah Branch, who will be in year 3 next year, a Mekhi Lemon, who will be in year 3 at that point, a Deuce Robinson, who will be in year 2, hopefully. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for him. Again, it's his freshman year. He'll either redshirt or he'll be more of a depth piece. But again, just following that chain of dynamic playmakers in the Lincoln Riley system, great to see Riley go get another nice playmaker. That's never really been the problem, Coach. Riley can kind of get the playmakers that he wants and needs across the country, and he's proven that yet again to fortify the continuation of a dynamic offense year over year.
Yeah. I don't think he's ever had a problem getting the playmaker. The problem's always been, does the playmaker fit in the system?
Right.
Because a good example is the receiver from Arizona,
Dorian Singer,
playmaker, but he just didn't fit. And it's okay.
Yep.
We're not saying he's a bad player. Just sometimes things just don't fit, right? I might like the shirt. I go try it on. Doesn't fit. Don't like the way it looks on me. But you put it on, best shirt that's ever came on the market. So that's okay. We're not taking anything from his ability. Sometimes you just don't fit in the system, and that's just the way it goes. That's the lay of the land. So
it's interesting, Coach, as you mentioned that, because if you look at a Corey Sims and you look at a Dorian Singer and you look at a Brendan Rice, all 3 of those guys are sort of roughly the same size and weight, sort of plus or minus 1 inch, plus or minus 7 to 10 pounds. They're all kind of in that similar frame conversation. And so will Corey Sims kind of go the direction of a Brendan Rice, someone who, developed under the program year over year, ultimately kind of became co-wide receiver number 1 option this past year with Taj Washington, kind of a 1A, 1B situation? Or does it kind of go the direction of a Dorian Singer? Again, all the tools are there, but he couldn't fit in because of just his style of play was more contested catches. And the Lincoln Riley offense is really predicated on matchup and getting enough space for your playmaker. So it'll be fascinating to see how it shakes out for Corey Sims. But frame-wise, it can go in sort of any direction. So it'll also be fascinating to see if Lincoln has sort of learned potentially of how to integrate some of these guys perhaps a little bit more. But sometimes, Coach, it's also just a numbers game. You bring in 8, 10 guys, playmakers, half potentially will hit, the other half won't, but they become your insurance policies. So I think a really good get, and it'll be exciting to see how his career progresses at USC. If it progresses at USC, we always have to kind of give that caveat now in this day and age, Coach. This could just be school number 1 of 4, 2 years from now. So, this is the world we live in.
No, 100%. And then moving forward, blocking and protecting his quarterback in the future, We also got another commit, Elijah Vicona, right? Vicona?
Vicona. Yep.
Vicona. I don't even think he's Polynesian looking at his picture. I just think he has one of those weird names, but maybe he is. I don't know. But if he is Poly, that's good. Another Poly. And Lincoln has been listening to the fans, the roar of where does he need to recruit, Jamal? Go ahead and say, where should he
Southern
be recruiting?
California, baby, the Trojan
Rancho.
Wall, the Trojan Wall. Shout out to USC Nico. I really appreciated his call out there on Twitter. The Trojan Wall, baby. I've been saying it, and that's when we know we're back.
Rancho Santa Margarita High School, 6'8", 368. He's a 3-star offensive lineman. I like 3-star offensive linemen and I like 3 stars in general because I feel like 3 stars have a ton of upside, right? 3 stars, you have so much room to grow. You could become great. The thing that scares me about this kid is that he is almost 400 pounds. You know what I mean? So it starts to turn into what position does he play? He's not a tackle. I don't think he can move well enough to be a tackle at that level. Now he's a big guard. He's going to have to get down to be a tackle. He has to become athletic. I'm not taking anything with him. He has a USC offer. USC is considered one of the top schools in the nation, which people say, but the 368 scares me a little bit. And I know people say, well, kids are getting bigger, this and that. There's nobody 368 in the world playing offensive line, not even in the NFL. You know what I mean? That 368 scares me. Bunch of work in the weight room. Bunch of work is going to be needed to get him to be at playing shape. When you're 6'8", 368 playing in high school, you're just bigger than everybody. Now you're playing where everybody is stronger and just as big as you. So how is that going to work? I think he's going to get that down. He gets it down, he becomes a very, very good right tackle, right? Like front side bruiser, right tackle. I don't think he'll be able to be a left tackle. I don't think he's athletic enough to be a left tackle, but I think he could become a very good front side protection right tackle. I do like the fact that he is a Southern California kid. I do like the interest is starting to ramp up a little bit, but I agree with you. I do think we need to recruit home more. We can't let these kids leave home, but we have to start somewhere. We have to fix the wounds. So I think this is a great get. I think this is a great start. We have 2 now on the, maybe a little bit more, but 2 big names that are out there that have decided to commit. This kid is a project. Hopefully he stays. Hopefully he understands he's a project. And hopefully by his redshirt sophomore, junior year, we'll see him play more. So I can't wait to see him grow. But this is a good get, great depth. He just has to stay patient because our offensive line is young and they're good. There's guys who are going to play as sophomores this year, and there's guys behind them that are just as good. So he's just going to have to wait and stay patient, but his time will come. What do you think about this get?
No, Coach, I think you said it really well. What's fascinating with Elijah Vicona, again, Rancho Santa Margarita down here south, 6'8", some have him at 365, some have him at 370, some have him in between. It's fascinating that a kid that big, he's bigger than any other like ESPN 300 offensive lineman. There were, I believe, only 4 ESPN 300 offensive linemen over 300 pounds in the class of 2025. And he's 370. So you're talking about a kid who's absolutely massive. And the fact that somebody that much bigger than everybody else is only 3 stars right now tells you he doesn't really know his body yet. And exactly as you said, Coach, he's just sort of bigger than everybody in high school. USC beat out the likes of UCLA, of Washington to be able to get his services. And I think the key now is going to be how he starts kind of understanding his body, develops some quickness, he's got to get kind of shredded a little bit in the weight room and starts to sort of understand positioning, center of gravity, hands, and really starts becoming a tactician. So I agree with you. This is a project. But the thing is, what he has, you can't teach, right? You can't teach 6'8", and you can't teach 370. So the hope is that with the right offensive line tutelage, this kid becomes, ultimately a Michelangelo project here. He's a slab of marble. Can he turn into the statue of David? Can the offensive line staff, can Lincoln Riley and others sort of chisel him into a perennial great player potentially 2-3 years down the road. So I think it's a chance worth taking because, again, the thinking is the things you can teach, okay, are available to you, but he has the things that you can't teach. So we'll see how it all shakes out. At worst, I think he becomes a depth piece 2-3 years from now. At best, he becomes a very quality starter, learns his body, understands his position, and could potentially be a bona fide star because he's got such great size. So remains to be seen how it all shakes out. I agree with you. I think it's going to be a hard pivot to have him play on the left side of the line. I think the blind side, particularly at that tackle spot, you have to be so athletic at that frame. I think that might be one step too far. But on that strong side of the line, on that right side of the line, it's also a little bit easier to run block on the right side, potentially when you have a right-handed quarterback, just with kind of the positioning of handoffs and such. I think that's where you want to focus, and we'll see how it shakes out.
Definitely. Let's not go to the bad news first. Let's stay in the good news. Let's go speculation, right?
Okay.
Let's talk speculation.
Speculation is our middle name, Coach. We live for the speculation.
So the past 2 weeks, SC France has been pretty much in the town square, pitchforks and torches, ready to get rid of Lincoln Riley. And then all of a sudden, we get a big 4-star offensive lineman, right? Defensive lineman, I'm sorry. Offensive tackle. He is offensive tackle. Says offensive tackle. But he decommitted from Auburn after his trip to USC. Carday Smith. I hope I say it right. It's Carday?
Yep.
Yeah. Carday Smith decommits from Auburn. Now, I remember I said, we're playing the flip game too, right? And I told Ryan, I'm not a big fan of the flip game. It's kind of an ethical thing. I'm not really into it. But then I sound kind of hypocritical because at the beginning of the show, I said that these commitments that happened during this time between the June 30th and the July 6th thing, these are the guys who are for real, because before and after this, they go into camp and we won't see him anymore. He hasn't made his decision yet. He's going to make his decision July 6th, correct? Is that what we're talking for the show? So he'll make a decision.
Well, no. July 6th is going to be Pettijohn. Pettijohn is going to be, yeah.
Carday Smith is supposed to be making his decision this weekend, if I believe, right?
Yeah, I mean, there isn't sort of a hard date, but it's kind of imminent. Yeah.
So his decision is also coming too. 4-star guy. So the question is he chasing the dollar or does he really like Southern California? But this also leads to this theory too. And I say this all the time. If you're committed, don't let your recruits go on visits. Is it because this is the last girl he got in bed with? You know what I mean? You get here, you have a great time. He's like, I want to come here. This is all he remembers. What have you done for me lately? This is great. If it's that, it could work out because he remembers the good time he had, but that could flip on him too because he'll start saying, this is not the school I visited. You know what I mean? Like, because when it comes to busy, hard work and those types of things. But this is a guy we could use. Athletic, Southern guy. He's from Alabama. On the offensive line, he definitely could be a guard. You can start running power, right? You know how I love power. Get power, get a good puller. That outside zone, he could seal the edge. He could be really good. The only thing I'm worried about, and I'm worried about all these kids who are from the Deep South, is being homesick, and can they stay in California and be able to handle California?
Yeah.
And when I say that, I say this to a lot of people who visit from the South and other states who come and visit California. I say, don't come here and get stuck. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, this is our weather all the time, right? This is how we live all the time. This is what we do. And it makes you want to be here forever. You know what I mean? Get past the politics and everything. The lifestyle is one of the best lifestyles in America. That's what gets kids here. Even though if it's our lifestyle, we're not millionaires, we're not sitting floor seat at the Laker games, or we're not taking like private jets and going places, we can still go snowboarding and surfing in the same day. Still a possibility. I think that's the thing that got him. The trick is, if he does commit, how do you keep him happy? Right? Hopefully it's not money and it's just playing time and he gets good enough and he plays, because I think this is a kid that comes in and plays right away. So speculation is great. Carday Smith, come on, buddy. You'll love it. And All you gotta do is look at that skyline. We own that downtown skyline. We can get you a job. All you gotta do is graduate. We can get you a job. So that works too. We're one player away. Carday, you are the guy that puts us in the college football playoff. You're the guy.
Wow. That's a big statement, Coach. That's a big statement.
That's
My
recruiting,
goodness,
right? That's recruiting right there. Hey, we're
I
one
love
player
it. Yeah.
away. You're that one player. Come be that one player.
Bernie Madoff called. He wants his top salesman back, Coach. But no, interesting about Carday Smith here, Coach. I think you said it really well. 4-star kid, 6'5", 293 pounds, from Mobile, Alabama. You can see there's a lot of athleticism there. Unlike a Vicona, I mean, this is a much more finished product in Carday Smith. This is a guy that can walk in and start very, very quickly on this offensive line and be a significant contributor and a star on this team moving forward. I think two things that are interesting. One is, Coach, you said it. Obviously, what are the intentions here? Number one, and you sort of unfortunately have to ask that question in today's day and age. Are you chasing the bag? Are you going to be, in a position where LA fits your personality, considering you're from the South? Those are two very different parts of the country. No better, no worse. But is your personality aligned with where you want to be? Because your environment is very critical to your level of success. Two, like we talked about, are you sort of looking for the bag or not? Is this sort of an anchor? And number three, what's a little bit interesting to me, Coach, is the other folks that are recruiting him. Considering he's from Mobile, Alabama, no Alabama, and Alabama has kind of been O-line U. So I don't want to say that's necessarily a red flag, but it is kind of interesting that a kid from Mobile, Alabama isn't being recruited by Alabama. Obviously, Auburn is in the mix significantly. Arkansas is in the mix. Colorado is in the mix. Duke is in the mix. But it's a little bit of an oddball collection of schools that he's looking at. So I think all of the physical pieces are there. I think the question for me is, USC feels kind of like an outlier in a lot of ways. He's sort of all over the place in his recruiting. So the question is, do we really going to have this kid long term? But if we can get him, I think it's a significant get. And again, it reestablishes Lincoln Riley's credibility in terms of being able to get guys, quality guys, close to elite guys in the trenches, because that's where we need to take the next step moving forward. So it'll be interesting to see. All Trojan fans, keep an eye out on that name, Carday Smith. While you're enjoying the burgers and the hot dogs and the fireworks, keep that phone next to you, and sort of keep an eye on that name Carday here over the next 48, 72, 96 hours. Hopefully we have some good news with the holiday weekend.
With that being said, we're going to flip it back. We're going to go to Justin Hill. So Justin Hill committed to Alabama today. It's interesting that the same thing is going on in Alabama that's happening over here, right? And maybe because we don't pay attention to Alabama that much. Well, I don't, right? We don't pay attention to Alabama that much, that kids are decommitting and changing. And us losing a kid from Ohio, Justin Hill, linebacker, to go to Alabama makes sense in a way, but it also doesn't make sense in a way, and I'll explain why. It makes sense that if you're going to Nick Saban's Alabama, but it doesn't make sense that you're going to, I can't think of the guy's name now, and I mentioned his name.
Kalen DeBoer.
Kalen DeBoer's Alabama, right? And when Kalen DeBoer got hired at Alabama, and I'm going to just be honest with you, I said that it's not going to work because Kalen DeBoer is not a Southeast guy, right? He's more of a Pacific Northwest, Northeast guy, because I think he came out of the Northeast from Division II school, and there's just a little more things that you have to do. And I don't know how much he's going to change Alabama. But this one makes me, and this one makes me wonder, how did we miss and what made him miss, right? And this is the true question that you have to ask. Like, was it money, right? And that's always the first question you have to ask. Was it money? But then it also goes to a point that's been brought up a lot on our lives, and a point that's been brought up by people in the comments. Maybe they don't trust the defense. And let me tell you why. A lot of defensive commits have been defensive backs, right? But we're not getting the guys that matter, which are the guys that are up front.
Right.
And I wonder if it's truly, and I'm not afraid to say, you know what, maybe this is a point you have to kind of look at it. Maybe they don't trust what's going on the defense. That puts us a year away of having a successful class because we can't get anybody up front on defense or we can't get anybody in the box. This is a guy that we need in the box. 210, 6'2", right? A guy that can fly around. He's a modern day linebacker, and he's a kid that could come and be impactful. This is another thing that I think kind of lured him away. SC linebacker room is kind of deep right now. They're like 6 to 8 deep, and they're only playing 2 backers. So now you're starting to question playing time. Like, how long is it going to take me to play? You know what I mean? Like, my goal is to do 3 and done. Every kid's goal is to do 3 and done. I don't care what you say, how you look at it. I'm trying to get to the NFL. That room is kind of deep. So I wonder if the miss was maybe it just takes too long and he's going to be too long in the tooth and he's ready to get it. He's trying to get in there and play. And the best place right now on paper for him to go somewhere and play is for him to go to Alabama, try to play and get to the NFL. That's where and that's how you can achieve that goal. I don't think you can achieve that goal at USC right now. Or if you can, it's not proven at this point, if that makes sense. It's not like the 08 team where every linebacker went, even the guys who didn't start. So that's not a proven point. I think USC's defense the next 2 years need to prove that they could be a top 15 defense, top 5 defense to get guys to the NFL in order to pull guys like this. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think some great points there, Coach. I mean, with Justin Hill, again, you said kind of this prototypical modern linebacker, the guy who can fly sideline to sideline, a lot of versatility. You can do a lot of different kind of gadget things with him, really physically an imposing specimen there in terms of quickness, speed, agility, as well as just sort of explosive size. What's interesting, though, Coach, Kalen DeBoer, I think a lot of the Alabama, this isn't an Alabama show, so we'll say it for 3 sentences and focus on SC, but a lot of the quote-unquote demise of Alabama post-Nick Saban, I think is a little bit overrated, because if you just look at the class of 2025, Alabama has 22 commits, Coach, in the class of 2025. They're the number 2 recruiting class in the country in the class of 2025. So DeBoer is doing just fine at Alabama right now, probably living off of the ghost of Nick Saban and the brand of Nick Saban, but Bama's doing just fine. I think, Coach, there's 2 things, and I think you've sort of nailed them both. Number one, Justin Hill, look who else SC was competing with for his services, right? He's a kid from Ohio. You're going up against Alabama. You're going up against Ohio State. You're going up against Texas A&M, and then it was SC. That was the Final Four. We all know Alabama, Ohio State, Texas A&M, they're kind of in that creme de la creme right now in terms of NIL money, right, Coach? We know that our sort of the pecking order for USC right now is about top 10, 12, 15, somewhere there. But there is that level inside that top 10, inside that top 8, inside that top 6, where it's significantly more money with some of these teams. So there's a money play. Look, some of the guys we were talking about, Vicona, some of the earlier guys we were talking about, Sims. Who is USC beating out to get these guys? They're beating out Missouri and Tennessee and Washington and UCLA. But when they got to go up against that top 5, top 6, top 7 nil teams, we're falling short. So I think there is an element with nil, number one. Number two, I think you nailed it. I don't think right now, if you are a star defensive player, what evidence do you have? And we talked about this last week, that Lincoln Riley is going to be able to get you to the promised land. He's never coached in the league defense over the course of his 7 or 8 years as a head football coach. He's never really prioritized it. And that's kind of been evident year over year. And I think the big question mark here, Coach, is DeAnton Lynn. Phenomenal year last year with UCLA, turning around a defense in the 80s and 90s into the top 20s. But how much of that was DeAnton Lynn? And how much of that was the guys that he had? I mean, Leatu Latu was an NFL lottery pick last year, right? So there's still kind of a question. The sample size with DeAnton Lynn right now is not as big to really garner that trust. Now, if Lynn puts together a great year defensively this season, even if the record doesn't work out the way we want it to, I think the door is going to open more significantly in terms of these defensive prospects. But they got to be able to see it on the field, right, Coach? You and I, we work in the real world. right? How many times do we see and have the conversation? Listen, hey, the PowerPoint charts look nice. The Excel spreadsheet looks nice, but where's the product? Where's the building? Show me the building, show me the product, show me the live demo. Right now, when it comes to defense, Lincoln Riley is in PowerPoint land. He's in Excel spreadsheet land. He's in paper land. It all sounds nice on paper, but we haven't seen the evidence in the real world yet. So until that evidence comes, how do you expect these kids to put the entirety of their livelihood, the entirety of their future, what they're sort of prospecting going to the NFL into those hands? It's a very significant leap of faith. And right now, we just aren't sort of sizing up with some of those teams that have proven it year over year. So that's why this is not just a critical year for Lincoln Riley, coach, but for DeAnton Lynn to prove it wasn't just a one-year wonder across town last year. He knows what he's doing.
It's crazy, though, because two things that you make good points on. One thing is that we're in the top 15, but we're still not an elite NIL team. That's just like rich people. There's people who are uber rich, and then there's the Kardashians. For the base people in the world, they think the Kardashians are beyond wealthy. But there are people like Steve Ballmer who just built a whole building in Inglewood with his own money. You know what I mean? Like,
no, coach, it's the way the world works right now, right? Like the economic disparity, right? Like you could be a top 10%er, but there's a big difference between being a top 10%er and a top 1%er.
Right.
And then there's a really big difference between being a top 1%er and a 0.1%er. Like those, it's almost like an exponential difference. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing with NIL, that there's kind of an exponential difference between being top 50 and top 20. And then there's like an exponential difference between being top 15 and top 5. It's not like, top number 5 has 1 million more than number 10. And I think it's much more of like a power law distribution. It's much more of like an exponential spread. Which is in many ways kind of the state of, socioeconomics in the world today. But I think that's what we're seeing here.
And then you talked about everything looks good on spreadsheets and on paper. Progress payments, right? Pretty soon we're going to have to pay you for your amount of progress. And I know this is football, but just to dip into my world, when we put in a payment, they want to walk the job and they want to see how much work is done. And if they believe that it's only 60%, the person who gave us the contract is only going to pay us for 60% of the work done.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's kind of like a progress payment thing. So that's definitely true. But let's go ahead and end this on a good note. Back to speculation. Riley Pettijohn, one of the top linebackers in the nation, Texas kid. Everybody thought he was going to Texas. According to our good friend on the show, according to a source, I'm going to go ahead and say USC Nico has us thinking that Riley Pettijohn may become a USC Trojan. Now, Riley Pettijohn does become a USC Trojan. That kicks the door open for a lot of defensive guys. The question is, how well... This is also what I noticed, too, about college recruiting. Well, this has always been kids recruit kids, but now in today's game, it comes down to negotiation and how much can you get my friend paid also. You know what I mean? It's for the top guys. I don't know how it is for 3 stars. I doubt the 3 stars can bargain that much money. Or you know what I mean? I think they're more like 100,000, 750.
Right.
We're talking $2 million, $3 million guys, right? And so how much does Riley Pettijohn kick the door open for USC for people like, oh, okay, it's worth being there? Because if it doesn't work, the reality is that he's gone in December. And this is one of the things that you have to – it's crazy how today's world is. And I just can't put my head around it because it wasn't around when I was coaching. But you have to think, like, everything has to go right now for him to be there for the bowl game. How do you keep everything right for him to be there in the bowl game? But getting him is a great get, right? This is something that changes. They said – I saw the tweet. It was retweeted by Nico's Fight on Rusty, right? If I got it wrong, then I apologize.
No, Fight on Rusty is Arrogant Nation.
Arrogant Nation.
Nico is USC Nico. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Nico. Sorry, Arrogant Nation. Yeah, I love both you guys.
The two of them are sort of the super Twitter users and along with Trojan Blade. That's kind of I think that's the USC trilogy in Twitter land for sure.
So Arrogant Nation, Fight on Rusty is the one that retweeted Pettijohn's mom saying that Eric Entz is the closer. And they have like him moving towards USC. It's like a 97% thing. He's supposed to make his announcement July 6th. That is something, remember how I said we turned the corner? That makes us completely turn the corner. Not completely turn it, but we're turning and we're starting to walk down the right street, right? Right now we're at the corner. We could go left, we could go right. We want to go right. This puts us right. This puts us on right street. This is the recruits that we need. And by him, and I'm going to stick to this. By him recruiting now, you know it's a solid committee. You know that it's for real. You know what I mean? If this was happening in March, I guarantee you next year I'm not getting excited about any March, April commits because it doesn't mean anything. They're all leverage guys. They're just using it for leverage.
Right.
These guys right now are the guys that are like, all right, I want to get this over with. I want to play my senior season. I want to go to my school. This is a big commitment that we need. So if you guys want to be by your phone, I mean, Carday Smith is a good one. Hey, once you see that Arrogant Nation for Fight on Rusty and it says Riley Pettijohn is a Trojan, light a firework off no matter what time of day it is. If you don't have a firework, then put some toilet tissue in a beer bottle and just set that off and run around.
Oh, boy. Just a disclaimer. We don't condone any sort of violence or public property destruction on this show or on any other part of Los Angeles Football Network.
That's something worse. All right, then have a beer, have a drink, celebrate, go do a big toast. Adam Riley Pettijohn will be a great gift for SC. It'll help us turn the corner and help us kick the door down. That means in that class we have Juju Lewis, Riley Pettijohn, I think another 5-star, but that puts us on the right track. And it's a defensive guy, and I think defensive recruiting is more of an issue than offense recruiting, and it helps us turn it. What do you think?
Yeah, Coach, this is a big one. I mean, I think that, what's interesting about Riley Pettijohn, 6'1", 215, so he's a little bit smaller than Carday Smith, but, super dynamic. I mean, this kid is really a huge difference maker. And I think, you made an earlier point when we were talking about Carday about the linebacker room being deep. But again, let's look at this and break this down. Mason Cobb, Eric Gentry, Mascarenas Arnold, those are probably the top 3 backers on the team right now going into this season. All 3 probably are gone after this season, right? I mean, 2 of them kind of term out, and then we'll see what happens with Gentry. I would think if he has a good year, given his injury history, I would recommend him to go, right? So there is going to be opportunities to play at the linebacker position. And I think what Pettijohn, the significance, Coach, here is, again, what we talked about earlier. This is one of those first prospects. Look who's the Final Four, right? It's Ohio State, Texas A&M, and USC. So this is one of those few prospects where SC's kind of hitting above their weight in terms of NIL. So if they can get this guy, it really shows and lends credence to the fact that you don't always have to be the highest bidder in NIL, that as long as you can kind of get close and then sell everything else about USC, from the coaching staff to the vision, to the facilities, to the campus, you really have a chance to get that absolute upper echelon of athlete. I mean, that's what made the Gibson and the Terry get so phenomenal when they happened, right? I mean, we went into Georgia and took something from UGA. I mean, you're talking about the team of the 2020s. That's what made it so powerful. So I think people will start feeling good again with the Riley Pettijohn. Take nothing away from Sims, who's an offensive guy. That was always kind of Lincoln Riley's wheelhouse. Take nothing away from Vicona, 3-star, who's a project. But, those are not going to replace the feeling that you have of losing a Gibson, a Terry, and a Stubbs as well. I mean, all 3 of those guys decommitted, right, Coach? So Pettijohn starts kind of turning the ship around again in terms of 2025 recruiting. So July 6th, 11 a.m. Central, which is 9 a.m. Pacific. Keep an eye. This kid is going to have 4 hats out there, and let's hope that he picks the Cardinal and gold for USC. Definitely
pick the Cardinal and gold and throw the other ones to the side. I guess the Lamborghinis weren't enough for that visit. That to me made no sense. But we're going to get killed in the comments for that, and I am not sorry. But but no, that'd be a good get. I think after this weekend too, I think recruiting's. I shouldn't say recruiting's over, but the big push for recruiting is done, and it makes sense. I'm going back to this again. I'm sorry, I'm repetitive, but like right now, when I go back, if I'm Lincoln Riley and I go back and I reflect on the season, I will have to ask myself, what can I do to make a big push between the second week of June and the first weekend of July? You know what I mean? Like I
Right.
gotta make sure that push and those recruits are the guys that come, and that's my core class, and I become better. That's it right there.
That's
All
right.
the other ones before, unless they're not real guys that are really about the school, then you kind of got to see where they go. If Gibbs and Stubbs and the other guy,
Gibson, Terry, and Stubbs.
yeah,
Yep.
if they don't commit in March, then I'm still on pursuit of them, and then I
Right.
understand where I really stand with them. Now, I think it looks worse now that you lose them instead of saying, "All right, I want to pursue them." It's okay as a coach to be like, "Hey, coach, I'm ready to commit." All right, well, let's hold on to that commitment and let's see where you are. You know what I mean? So it's a game you have to play. And you got to understand the game. Riley, as of my point, I was going back to Riley next year needs to understand that second week of June, first week in July. I need to be strong there, and that's where my strong commitments need to come from because that's where my team's going to come from.
Yep.
You're not going to always get lucky with a Julian Lewis. Like, no, I'm committed to this. Well, it's a quarterback. Let's start getting D linemen and linebackers like that, and then now you start to see a change in recruiting becomes a lot easier.
And coach, the one thing I'll say, I mean, all phenomenal points is after this weekend, to your point, things solidify, the cement hardens. You really have a nice sense now leading into December of where you kind of stand. Obviously, until the ink dries in December, you're never sure, but at least you're starting to sort of triangulate like GPS on what your recruiting class will be for 2025. But the one thing I'll say, coach, the retention and the selling of Julian Lewis never stops because
Correct.
he is the centerpiece of that class now. And again, SC is his pick, but I can't imagine any of us feel comfortable with him taking as many visits as he has. You know, we can sort of self-rationalize at night that, oh, he's just enjoying the experience. He just wants to see what's out there. He's totally committed to USC. But, you know, when I start seeing photos of him in Colorado and sitting on the throne and taking the keys of the kingdom from Shedeur Sanders, you know, and pictures like that, which was a very cool picture, by the way, you know, it doesn't make you feel good. You know, you're not panicking. You know, again, the sky's not falling as our slogan goes over the last few weeks. You're not, you know, going to a full-on panic or a sweat in the middle of the night. But I can't imagine it feels good. It certainly doesn't feel good for me when I look at pictures like that. So you have to keep the selling. You have to keep being on the forefront of Julian Lewis's mind moving forward. That needs to be kind of just an ongoing behavior that you have from now until signing day.
The crazy thing now is that on recruiting visits, when the head coach talks to the parents, they're talking money and they're not talking what can you do for my kids as far as education is. How much can you pay my kids? That's the craziest thing, and I will never, ever get over that. I will say this. I thought NIL was a check for your name and likeness. I did not think NIL was going to be this. I do not like this NIL. I thought you get paid for jersey sales and you get revenue shares and you get, you know, 50, 60, maybe $100,000 in your bank account, enough to make you college rich. I did not think it was going to make you wealthier than everybody in America. So it's crazy. I do not like this NIL. I think there's some integrity issues to it. I think there's ethical issues to it. And I think it needs to get fixed as soon as possible because it's going to destroy the college game. I'm not saying that they no longer need to pay them. I'm saying that they need to put a structure on it before it gets really bad, really fast. Because one donor from Duke could come and just wipe everybody out. You know what I mean? All it takes is one donor.
It's been the theme this year, obviously, that, look, this isn't a sustainable model. Unfortunately, you sort of have to play the game. Otherwise, you fall so far behind of everybody else that by the time, if a change does occur, you're no longer on the radar, right? That's the behavioral economics of this, where you sort of have to do, quote unquote, the wrong thing in the hopes that the right thing and the right behaviors then ultimately get incentivized. Because if you just abstain from doing the wrong thing, in air quotes, you get left so far behind. you're not going to be on these kids' radar anymore. And then when it's a new world and it's more of an equitable world per se, or a structured world, then, you're not really thought of anymore. And it's sort of a moot point. So again, it's a much deeper conversation for another day, Coach.
Yeah.
Whether it comes to sort of, this is a pure free market economy. In some sense, that our nation was built on that. So it's kind of fitting, Coach, that we're closing the show here because it's 4th of July. Our nation was built on a pure meritocracy, a pure free market economy. That's what this is now. But I think you and I and many others feel like, it is a pure free market economy. Where does this go? Where does this kind of stop? At some point, you do need, even in the United States, you do have some sense of regulation with corporations, with businesses, with tax rates, with how to be able to do things. There is business law around a free market economy. Right now in NIL, it's just a free market economy with no business law. So
Right.
It really is kind of the Wild West out there. But another conversation for another day, Coach, I'm sure.
No, I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm against the way it's turned.
For
That's all.
sure.
Yeah. But we have to do what we have to do to stay relevant. Just so that's all. Definitely. Jamal's been good. Go clean the grill off. Go get the hot dogs ready. You got to get the buns with the sesame seeds. I found some good ones.
Totally agree.
You got to get the buns with the
Totally
sesame.
agree.
And if you're hosting, this goes to everybody out there. If you're hosting, please have toppings for your burgers. Nobody just likes cheese and regular bun. Have the tomato, the onion, and the lettuce, all the toppings. You have to be a presentable host. So
Great,
do all the right
absolutely.
stuff.
Listen, for all USC fans out there, make sure you got the onions, you got the ketchup, you got the lettuce, you got the tomatoes, the pickles, have some jalapenos as well, some spicy mustard, and the secret ingredient, let's hope we get some Parmesan.
There you go. Get a little bit of Parmesan. And I'll leave you with this one. And I'll leave everybody up in arms and leave with this one. Mustard does not go on burgers. And my theory is behind it, mustard doesn't go on burgers because if you go to a steakhouse, you won't put mustard on your steak. So let's leave it there. Jamal's been good. It's been real. Guys, thank you guys for watching. It's the Bet Online to the Detroit podcast. You guys know how it goes. Live free. Fight on.
Nobody knew that healthcare could be so complicated.
Trump was a failure on healthcare.
Hundreds of thousands of Black Americans lost health care insurance. That is outrageous.
And if he's president again, he would cancel insurance for millions more of us.
We cannot go back. President Biden and Vice President Harris have lowered health care premiums and expanded coverage for Black families. They also capped the price of insulin at $35. Joe Biden is getting the job done for people just like me.
I'm Joe Biden, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Biden for president.